The Crypto Street podcast is hosted by Crypto Dale, Prince, and Killer Whale, who can be found on Twitter at CryptoDale, at Killer Whale, K1LLERWH4LE, and at 13Prince31. None of this should be construed as investment advice. For information on how to join our private Telegram group, The Pod, please email tcsp@protonmail.com. The Crypto Street podcasts are officially sponsored by 21 Cryptos, the world's first and only cryptocurrency trading magazine. Visit 21cryptos.com and enjoy 50-plus pages of pro tips and predictions, an analysis of the best 21 coins to invest in for the month, trading lessons and articles from your favorite pros, price action event calendars, entertainment, and lots more. Stay ahead of the game and get your copy today. Visit 21cryptos.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crypto Street Podcast. We hope you've made it out of the Bitcoin madness that's been going on the last 24 hours. As always, my name's Crypto Dale. I'm alongside my usual hosts, Killer Whale.
Hey.
And Prince.
Happy to be here, as always.
Today's guest, Michael Oved, is a former market maker at Virtue Financial and co-creator of AirSwap. Oved spent time at high-frequency trading firm Virtue Financial. While at Virtue, he experienced the full stack of a financial technology company, all while becoming familiar with trading and strategy design, data mining and analysis, and automated order books and execution. Oved is a co-founder of AirSwap, a decentralized peer-to-peer token trading platform on the Ethereum blockchain. Thank you very much for being with us, Oved. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Start off today, what kind of brought you from the world of traditional capital markets at Virtue to the crypto market we're in?
Yeah, so kind of as you touched on, so it's part of the revolution in trading where computers basically replace humans on Wall Street. When I joined that company, we were pretty small, we were like 40 people, family owned. We were kind of just the small guys, and we grew like crazy. And, on that journey, I got to live in Sydney and Singapore and build out the Asia business, and that was really cool. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of, close connection to Asia and, the different, Asian cultures. I lived in Singapore for a couple years. The Asia endeavor allowed us to, IPO in 2015 for, $2.5 billion. And, after IPO, I just kind of was taking time off. Now when people look at Wall Street and they think about trading, it's like, computers are synonymous with Wall Street right now. Everything is algorithmic. It's like 90% of the trades that happen on Wall Street right now are algorithmic. But, when I joined, we were kind of like, we were kind of a small, really on the front lines, trying to hustle really hard. And, we built a really great thing. I was there for 7 years, and I have a ton of respect for those guys. So I guess after the IPO, I was just like hanging out, at this music festival. I got into the Burning Man scene, and, I was hanging out at this music festival called Further Future in Vegas. And this is like a Robot Heart offshoot festival. And, I randomly met Joe Lubin and Consensus, a bunch of the people from Consensus at that time. This was April of 2016, and they kind of taught me about Ethereum, and they were like, "Oh, blockchain." I was like, "Oh, sweet. So it's like Bitcoin." They're like, "No, it's Ethereum." And I was kind of like, "Oh, that's cute. I'm not going to take this seriously." And, but I just like made friends with them, and it was like, these guys are really cool. A lot of the girls are really great. Met, Carolyn and, Ashley and Sidonia and a bunch of those people. And then kind of when I went home and I read about Ethereum seriously, I was like, okay, so you can basically just rewrite all of finance. At this point, you can just like automate all of finance, all this crap that I've been dealing with. I've seen this story before. Now we have this platform, and I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, if I could just butt in right there, that's a super interesting point to me. Coming from the world of traditional finance, where I come from, that was sort of the thing that I realized as well. I knew Bitcoin was sort of this decentralized cash, peer-to-peer cash, but Ethereum seemed like way more. It seemed like you said, an opportunity to automate a lot of what happens in financial markets. And coming from Virtue, I really wanted to get you on the show because I think, you come from maybe the best market maker, the best known market maker in traditional capital markets, equity markets in Virtue. And so kind of give us your perspective coming from those markets, maybe how they're a little bit different from crypto, how they might be similar, the challenges.
Yeah. So, in traditional Wall Street, and it's kind of the way that crypto is traded right now too, is you have these centralized pools of liquidity. You have all these different exchanges. One asset you can trade on like 30 different exchanges. And, that kind of doesn't make sense. It's just inefficient. A lot of the reason why Virtu was really successful is that we understood how each one of these exchanges operates, and we knew like the really tiny details. We did a lot of work. There's a lot of like heavy technical design and technical analysis and optimizing our systems to be fast and intelligent. And in the case of crypto, actually you have this thing called blockchain, which is this really beautiful technology which basically just replaces the entire clearinghouse, the entire exchange mechanism and clearinghouse. So you don't even need like these exchanges, decentralized pools of liquidity to exist anymore, because you can just have people trade with each other, find and trade with each other peer to peer. And that's kind of like using the knowledge that I had at Virtu, which is like how does each exchange operate, and what are the good things about each exchange, and what are the things that are going to cause friction. I kind of used that knowledge, and it really helped me design AirSwap ultimately.
So leading into that, what exactly is AirSwap on a high level overview? You don't have to get too crazy in depth, but just tell someone listening that might not have a general idea or haven't read the white paper like as we all have, and kind of have a general understanding on a high level. What exactly is AirSwap?
Yeah, so AirSwap is a global trading platform. It's basically the ability for people to find each other and trade with each other peer to peer. And kind of touching on what we were touching on before, which is you don't need these centralized pools of liquidity to exist anymore, because we're at the point where the blockchain can, or the blockchain combined with smart contracts can actually do everything on basically as a layer on top of the Ethereum network. The architecture of AirSwap that we chose is basically a strictly peer-to-peer design. And the reason why we did that is because, order books, which is commonly used in, financial markets, order books are designed for centralization. Like by definition, you want all the liquidity to be centralized in an order book. And when you try to decentralize an order book, that becomes a really weird, difficult problem to solve, unpredictable problem to solve. And it's actually our thesis that most of the trading is actually, most of the order book trading is actually going to stay on centralized systems, and the decentralized designs that adopt peer to peer are the ones that are going to win in the long term.
Yeah, because in my mind, the sort of exchange landscape in crypto has been currently either centralized and somewhat efficient, or decentralized and slow, clunky, hard to use. So it's sort of this trade-off between, efficiency and this autonomy that's so important to a lot of people in crypto, this sort of libertarian freedom, I control my own assets, that mindset. How have you guys tried to bridge the gap in terms of improving upon, and I know I'm kind of stealing your question here, Prince, but sort of like Ether Delta, for example, where it's a decentralized exchange, but from we hear a lot of the community is it's tough to use. It's not fun. It's not pretty. It's not smooth. So how have you kind of tried to bridge those two gaps?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, is that the centralized exchanges are pretty good. They work. I mean, other than the fact that, I think the two big limitations of a centralized exchange fundamentally are that you have to trust the centralized exchange, both with your assets, and that they're not going to abuse their ability to see the orders before, and act on the orders before the rest of the market. And also the fact that they're local. These are local liquidity pools where, like, for example, an order on Bittrex cannot execute against an order on Poloniex, just by definition, because they're different order books. But when you go from, so you want to gain those two benefits. When you're going from centralized to decentralized, you want to gain the benefit of, security and trust, and you want to gain the benefit of having a global, trading platform. But you don't want to sacrifice what all the centralized exchanges are really good at, which is things like UI, speed, usability, low fees, ease of placing and canceling orders. You don't want to take these things away from traders, because if you do, then the centralized exchange starts to look like a pretty good option. So, I mean, AirSwap was probably a 3 to 5 month thought exercise before actually getting into it. We were really just trying to think about what exchanges are really good at and how do we keep what they're really good at and but give the benefits of a decentralized exchange. And that's kind of like where my co-founder Don comes in a really good way, is that he's a product guy and he's a usability guy, and he's had experience building, like as an early employee at Zynga and a few different startups that were like very successful, one of which got acquired by Google. And he knows how to build things that actually work. And so, I think that's ultimately going to be a lot of our focus is, providing a really good user experience for customers. I actually like EtherDelta. I know it's clunky and it's, it's not, the right, some of the user experience probably can be improved, but I think as like a not even a proof of concept, as like a first fully functional decentralized exchange that actually does a lot of volume, I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, especially when it takes a little time to figure it out. I know I've used it a few times, and once you actually get the hang of it, it's like, I'll use this again. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, you don't need an account. You're just like in there submitting orders and trading, and it's
that part is really cool. That's how it should be, probably, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think they got, maybe 75% of the way there. And they did that with one engineer. I mean, Zach actually, is an ex-HFT guy. He's an ex, so he lives in New York. We're friends. I think EtherDelta's, if they did a token launch and they were able to actually, build a platform that they were intending to compete with like Bittrex or something, and they had the money to do so, I'm sure they would produce something really cool. But, building an exchange is really hard.
So kind of, you just mentioned the token launch thing. AirSwap has a token.
Yeah.
Now, for the listeners who really don't know anything about AirSwap still, would you be able to go into kind of the benefits that the token holders are going to get?
Yeah, so basically the token is designed as an access to the platform. It's basically like a software license that you can later trade. So the benefits of holding the AirSwap token are basically that you can access this global trading network. We are considering other functionality to build on top of the AirSwap token, but we are that's more in the design process right now. And then we have to go through like legal approval. So I think that there will be some cool updates with respect to that in early 2018.
So we're starting to see quite a few decentralized exchange protocols pop up in the crypto space. I think, again, going back to the whole thing where you're in control of your assets, it ties within the whole sort of motto of the space, the narrative. One of the most popular ones that I have seen is the 0x protocol. I'm curious as to how AirSwap compares to that, where it's different, where it might be the same.
Yeah, so 0x protocol is, for the most part, taking the approach of doing a relayer, having people being able to spin up their own relayers, which are essentially order books. So our design is peer-to-peer, and their design is to take the order book model.
There are a whole bunch of concerns with that model, correct, in terms of front-running potentially, information being out there?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, is when you move from a centralized exchange that actually works really well, and then you try to move to a decentralized trading context, you don't want to make too many sacrifices. You might have to make some sacrifices like speed, just by definition, because the blockchain might not be able to process transactions as fast as a centralized matching engine. And that's going to be the case no matter what, because having one computer that's highly optimized to process transactions is going to be faster than a distributed network. So you're going to lose some things. You just want to make sure that you're not losing too much to the point where people aren't trusting and aren't actually using the new system. I think Xerox people have concerns with it. I have concerns with it. I think that they're taking the approach of probably releasing things early and getting people to try to use them, and then gather feedback and try to improve them. Like I've already seen a few different iterations of their design. I think that's going to be their approach, where they're just like constantly iterating on what they're doing.
Move fast and break things, sort of thing,
sure,
and learn on the way.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little bit dangerous when you're talking about an exchange, but that's my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think any of these relayers have really taken off. And like I said before, it's also the approach that I think that Xerox takes is basically that they're expecting other people to run the exchanges, and running an exchange is really expensive and difficult. You have like a lot of regulatory costs. First of all, you have a lot of marketing costs. You have overhead. You have to customer service. You have a lot of things that you have to account for. And so having all these competing exchanges running on the same protocol, we'll see.
So I guess I got a question here. As somebody who's not as familiar with smart contracts, how they all work all the time, I'm not the most technical guy. I'm more of a speculator. So kind of run me through, because you guys are very peer-to-peer using a smart contract. And we've kind of been hearing of some cases, like Quadriga, they had a smart contract lock up all their Ether on their clients, which was, they didn't really see it coming. Or we heard of that Parity lockup. How do you guys, I guess, take these sort of risks, and, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because, ultimately the immutable state of blockchain, just by definition, is pretty fucking terrifying. It's like if you make a mistake, or if you don't make a mistake, if someone comes in and steals your money, or locks your funds, in the case of Parity, there's nothing you can do, right? It's on the network. Like you don't, if you personally own Ether, even just Ether, you don't really own it. It lives on the network, and you have a key that's able to sign and send it. You don't have anything, physical. So you could lose it at some point, and then there's no repercussions. There's no way you can get it back. So, I think that to go back to your point about a smart contract, basically a smart contract is a way to execute code on the blockchain. It's a way to execute code in a decentralized fashion. So basically the miner stores the transaction into the blockchain. And what that code is it can be anything. It can be send money from A to B. It can be send money from A to B if C does something. You can basically write whatever type of contract you want. And my advice is that these and I think it's a well established precedent, is that you just need to make these things as simple as possible. And the more complexity you introduce, the more chance you have of someone else coming in and exploiting it. Yeah.
So, Oved, I've been thinking of a couple of things coming off the heels of Consensus Invest yesterday in New York, and sort of the world of traditional finance getting more and more interested in the world of crypto. And I think you're probably a good person to talk to about that. Having worked at one of probably the leading marketing, kind of liquidity providers within equities, what are some core themes that you see from your perspective that are going to be important in crypto over the next, let's say, 6 months to a year?
Yeah. It's really good. First of all, it's really great that you associate Virtu with such a high caliber. I really appreciate that, because that was, that was like my previous lifetime was like dedicated to making that happen. It was really cool.
Yeah. I had a high opinion of you guys, and then I found out about AirSwap, and I looked at your bio as the co-founder, and I was like, oh, Virtu, that's like a big name in equity. I got to get this guy on. So.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool that we're at that stage now. That took an incredible amount of work, and we're going to do the same thing for AirSwap. So, so I think, just going back to your question, like, I went and I hung out on the trade floor of Virtu the other day, and I was talking to the head trader, and I was like, so are you guys looking at crypto? And they're like, kind of. And I was like, well, why not? This thing's crazy. It's growing. You guys can make a lot of money. And the head trader just looked me in the eye and he said, what do you think about the exchanges in crypto? Like, are they sophisticated? And I thought about it and I was like, no, probably not. So, I think really the on-ramps, the trading platforms, the familiarity, I think there's going to be a big growth. I think what Coinbase is doing has really, been good for the ecosystem to get more institutional players on, where they're doing, custodial service. Yeah. I think we're going to start to see a lot more platforms like that over the next 6 months, where people are basically able to onboard institutional people. And like Mike Novogratz said, the herd is coming. And, I definitely think you look at any asset that's multiplied by 10 over the past year and shows no sign of abating. And it's not even, there's such a small amount of money in the space right now compared to any other asset class that, like, I have to agree with Mike that, I think that these on-ramps are going to get more sophisticated, and then we're going to see a lot more money flow into the space.
So sort of an offshoot about this is something I'm starting to wonder about lately. That whole influx of institutional and public money coming into the space, I know the general sort of wisdom is that's a great thing. All this money is going to come in. It's going to drive everything up. But I think there's a flip side to that. In competition, it's going to get a lot harder to trade these markets. How do you see that playing out, this sort of battle between all this capital coming in, which is bullish and maybe driving prices up, versus all this capital being maybe smarter capital and harder to succeed against?
So you're talking about trading firms not being able to succeed as much?
Well, I think sort of your average person, your average millennial sitting in his house, trading crypto. I think he's going to be going up against way tougher participants in the future.
I think that's true. And I was talking to one of my old friends who's a stat arb trader, and he just started to do some simulations on Bitcoin, and he was like, wow, the opportunities in this space are massive for stat arb, which is a whole, trading style in quantitative finance that probably is not sophisticated at this point in Bitcoin. So I mean, I think that I do think that the trading environments will get more competitive. I mean, they definitely will. I think that the arbitrage between different exchanges, I think there was like a big Bitcoin move the other day, and the spread between two different US exchanges was like 1.5%. Yeah. That's kind of unheard of. And basically all that is that there's not enough, people don't have enough capital at each one of the exchanges to like complete the arb. I think things like that will start to go away. But there's probably another year or two left of, trading opportunity until the more sophisticated players get in.
Hear that, everybody? You got a year. Yeah, have fun.
Yeah, make some money in this year. Let's go.
Yeah, time to hop on Polo immediately. So
maybe longer. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully.
Maybe shorter.
So
maybe shorter. Yeah. Absolutely.
I kind of got the important questions that I had in mind. Dale or Prince, if you guys have anything else, or if Oved, if you want to let the listeners know anything else about AirSwap or anything you're thinking.
Yeah, like my big thing was really just the smart contract risk. Just as a guy who's kind of naive with some of that stuff. So, and yeah, Oved, you touched on that pretty nicely. So, thank you.
Yeah, actually, what was interesting about the smart contract thing is that when I originally started looking at this space, it was right after the DAO happened last year.
Okay, yeah.
And I was just looking at the DAO, and I was just thinking to myself, I can't believe that so many transactions were done algorithmically without some sort of risk mechanism in place. And that's actually something that you have at any of these. I think any of these automated trading companies, which is basically if you're running an algorithm that is moving money algorithmically, that's pretty terrifying, right? Like if you have a bug where the strategy wants to buy and then it sells, and then it wants to buy but instead of buying it sells, and then you just get into this infinite loop where you're just buying.
Yeah.
That type of thing, what you do is you have something at Virtu that we called lockdowns. And what lockdowns do is they're a way to automatically shut off the strategy. It's basically like a low-level part of the code that just stops any transaction from happening. So I wonder if any of these protocols are going to start to adopt similar mechanisms to basically
big. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, you basically just protect your users in the case that something is actually going wrong. You know, if $50 million is being moved in a period of 500 milliseconds, that's probably something you want to be worried about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there are a lot of parallels between automated trading and blockchain smart contracts. And yeah, we're just gonna, AirSwap, we're just gonna build the best exchange possible. And, we have the resources and, have great advisors, and are hiring really aggressively. So if you guys know anyone, that wants to join the team, let me know.
We have a couple pod members. The pod is our private Telegram group that we kind of shoot the shit in, mess around, talk a lot of crypto, but a lot of just normal everyday life stuff too.
Some talented guys in there.
Yeah, we have our job listings online, so you go and check them out. And we're definitely excited to talk to a lot of people, and the community's been really great behind this project. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Oved. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great having you on, Oved. Appreciate your time. I know you're busier than shit, but best of luck to you in the future. And if there's anything that we can do for you, just please let us know.
All right, thanks a lot. Will do.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, bye.